Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we are tackling a classic and highly important billing challenge, subscription proration. Right now, when a customer upgrades their subscription partway through a billing cycle, they are currently being massively overcharged. The system blindly charges the full price of the new plan and offers zero credit for the unused days they already paid for on their old plan. We will implement fair proration math. First, we will calculate the exact fraction of time remaining in the current billing cycle. Then, we will use that fraction to compute a prorated credit for the old plan and a prorated charge for the new plan. The final amount due will simply be the new prorated charge minus the old prorated credit, ensuring the customer pays exactly what is fair. Let's jump straight into the Develow editor and get it right. Let's make sure we actually understand what proration means. If you are new to billing logic, this can sound a bit intimidating. Let's ask Develow to break it down for us. In SaaS billing, what exactly is subscription proration? Subscription proration is a way to charge customers fairly when they change their plan mid-billing cycle. Instead of making them pay the full price for a new plan when the month is already half over, proration calculates exactly how much time is left in the cycle. It charges them only for the remaining days on the new plan and gives them a credit for the unused days they already paid for on the old plan. That makes perfect sense. You only pay for what you use. Let's switch over to billing.js and break down our failing tests. We have a couple of failing tests here. The biggest trick with this problem is making sure all of our time variables are operating on the exact same scale. Stripe's values and our server's now variable might come in different formats, so we need a clean way to normalize them. Let's ask Develow how to handle this conversion. In JavaScript, I have timestamps from Stripe and an ISO time string. What is the safest way to convert all of them into a unified format like milliseconds so I can accurately calculate a time fraction? A safe approach is to use a single unit of time for all of your calculations. A common choice is milliseconds since the Unix epoch. The first step is to convert every timestamp into milliseconds. You can do that using date.parse or newDate.getTime method, depending on the format you're working with. After the conversion, make sure the result is valid. In other words, verify that you didn't end up with null. And also make sure all of your timestamps represent the same kind of time. For example, Stripe timestamps are usually Unix timestamps in seconds, while ISO date strings are already represented in UTC. Let's look at the difference. Stripe-style Unix timestamps are typically stored in seconds, so you'll need to multiply them by 1000 to convert them into milliseconds. On the other hand, ISO date strings can be passed directly into milliseconds using date.parse or newDate.getTime. So, as a practical rule of thumb, if the value is a Unix timestamp in seconds, convert it by multiplying it by 1000. If it's an ISO date string, simply parse it with date.parse or newDate.getTime. Once they are all in milliseconds, your fraction math will execute flawlessly. That is an incredibly elegant way to ensure unit safety. Now, once we have that fraction, we need to apply it to our plan prices to get integer sense. Let's ask Develow our second question. Once I calculate the time fraction as a decimal between row and 1, how do I multiply it by our unit amounts and make sure they stay as clean integer cents for Stripe? This part is mainly about choosing a good rounding strategy and avoiding floating point precision issues. Let's start with the basic approach. Assume remaining is a decimal value between 0 and 1, and unit amount is an integer representing the price in cents. To calculate the prorated amount, simply multiply the unit amount by the remaining fraction, and then round the final result. In JavaScript, you can use math.round for this. This is also the rounding strategy commonly used for Stripe-style proration previews, where the value is rounded to the nearest cent. One important thing to remember is not to round too early. If you round intermediate values, you can end up with a different final result. Now that we have a solid understanding of the logic required to solve this problem, it is time to put these concepts into practice. Let's switch over to our editor to implement the solution, and here is the complete code block to get it working as we build it out. First, we need to make sure we are fetching both the old price and the new price objects from our array using .find method. Let's add those lookups right at the top. Next, let's normalize all of our time fields to milliseconds using the new date.getTime method we just learned, and calculate our remaining time fraction. Perfect. By dividing the remaining time by the total period, we get a precise decimal between 0 and 1. Now all that's left is to compute the prorated amounts and return our object. By calculating the exact remaining fraction and rounding to the nearest integer cent, we ensure our customers are billed completely fairly down to the penny. Let's run our tests. And there we go. All green check marks. Our proration math is perfectly accurate. Now that our code is fully verified, the very last thing we need to do is submit our result to lock it in. Just click that submit button and it is officially approved. Great job mastering subscription proration, and I'll see you in the next one.